Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Star Wars specifically and how J.J. Abrams, the director of Star Wars Force Awakens and Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, is a really specific, very direct cautionary tale about Joe Biden being our president from 2021 through 2021, in case he were to win. Right? It will not go well. And J.J. Abrams is a really specific cautionary tale about this. So let's jump right into it, okay? All right, so I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. There is a thing called the Skywalker Saga. Now, the Skywalker Saga started with Episode 4, Star Wars, went into Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, went into Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. It then specifically went into the prequel films. The Star Wars prequel films are, of course, super famous for essentially. The prequel films are really, really interesting because they specifically they're problematic from the perspective of they were very directly George Lucas's attempt to not do a sequel to Star Wars, and they got him into a lot of trouble. And frankly, they're the entire reason that that they actually went into one of the reasons why Star Wars was sold to Disney for $4 billion. So Episode 1, of course, is Phantom Menace. Episode 2 was the Attack of the Clones. And then, so you had Episode 2, and then I always have a hard time remembering I can't believe I have a hard time remembering the third movie, but it's Episode 3 is Revenge of the Sith, I believe, yeah. So, it's really, really, and then you go right into Star Wars Episode 7, which is the Force Awakens. You go into Episode 8, which you go directly into Last Jedi, which was, upset a lot of people. And then Episode 9, which is, without a doubt, the worst Star Wars film ever made, because it was just, it's hard to even describe what kind of damage that film did to the Star Wars brand. Now, the reality is Star Wars is going to be absolutely fine because, as a brand, and the reason why is as bad as Star Wars Rise of Skywalker was, The Mandalorian was inversely good, right? And really, and brought Star Wars to television in an absolutely spectacular fashion at exactly the moment when we needed it to do the work it did, right? So Star Wars as a brand is going to be fine. But the reality is, Star Wars 7, people were like, hey, this is interesting. Let's see where this is going. Star Wars 8 was like, whoa, we are going down a bad path. And then Star Wars 9 was the arrival at the end of that bad journey. Now, the Skywalker Saga is episodes 1 through 9. Now, the Rise of Skywalker is the most misnomered movie title in the history of all movie titles, right? It talks about the rise of Skywalker, but it's exactly the opposite. So basically, in Episode 2, you see the death of Shmi Skywalker. And then in Episode 6, you see the death of Darth Vader. Okay. Oh, let's go through it. All right. So in Episode 2, you see the death of Shmi Skywalker. She is killed by Tusken Raiders. In Episode 6, you see the death of Anakin Skywalker. He is killed by rebels who are destroying the second Death Star. And then in Episode 9, you see the death of Leia Skywalker. And she is killed by the grief of witnessing her son being willing to kill the last Jedi, which is Rey. And then last, you see the death of Ben Skywalker in Episode 9. And he is killed when he sacrificially sucks his own life essence out to give it to the last Jedi, Rey, and save her life, right? So, Rise of Skywalker is literally the fall of Skywalker and the end of Skywalker and the termination of the Skywalker line and the obliteration of the Skywalker family from the Star Wars universe. When Rise of Skywalker is done, there is not a living Skywalker in the entire Star Wars universe. So, J.J. Abrams came in, had a little bit of an idea in Episode 7, said, hey, everybody, see ya, I'm out of here. I don't have any desire to do Star Wars Episode 8 or Star Wars Episode 9. Bye! And then just waved and walked off, right? So Disney went and got J.J. Abrams, right? They recruited him. He did Episode 7. He had no desire to do Episode 8, no desire to do Episode 9. They brought in the director, I'm drawing a blank now, Ryan, I think is his first name or his last name. Director Ryan just absolutely, cocked that thing 6 ways to Sunday on Episode 8 and upset a lot of people, right? I didn't mind Episode 8. It wasn't terrible, right? But one of the things that was there, but with Episode 7 and Episode 8, where there's a lot of debate about what was going on with those films, right? But that debate was over when Episode 9 happened, because one, the CEO of Disney came out and said a whole bunch of things about, in one of his books, and just told the truth that they had no story. There was no plan for Episode 8 or 9. They were literally winging it. Like the same way you would do if you were cooking a meal for your family. Just, we're going to spend $500 million to $750 million on these movies. We don't need a script for 8 and 9. We can just wing it, right? Turned out terrible, right? And J.J. Abrams with Rise of Skywalker just really trashed the entire, the saga, right? And he was like, hey, you guys remember the Skywalkers? Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and Princess Leia and Kylo Ren? Well, they're all trash and they're gone and they're all dead. What the heck, right? Like, why would you do that? Why would you literally, like, Star Wars is about the Skywalkers, and so you make sure that there is no Skywalker in the entire Skywalker universe? It was horrific, right? Just terrible, right? Well, guess what? J.J. Abrams is Joe Biden. How? Well, they're almost mirrored exactly, right? So Joe Biden comes along and goes, hey, everybody, I'm here to do the VP job for Obama. Did it up, right? Did a pretty good job. Not too terrible. Just like Episode 7. J.J. Abrams didn't do a terrible job on Episode 7. It was just fine, right? Just like Joe Biden did the VP job, right? So Joe Biden finishes the VP job, and he's like, hey, everybody, bye-bye. I'm just like J.J. Abrams. I got absolutely no interest in being president in 2016. See you all. I'm going off to do my own thing. Bye. Right? Exactly like J.J. Abrams. And then, after 2016, so Episode 7 goes fine, right? Biden's VPing for Obama goes fine. And then, Episode 8, Last Jedi is just, it's terrible, right? And it upsets a whole lot of people. What happened right after Biden goes out? Donald Trump comes in, cocks that thing 6 wings the sideway, upsets a whole bunch of people. So the Democrats, just like Disney did, come in and go, hey, Joe, we know you have absolutely no interest in being president. Why don't you be our president? And it's going to be the same thing as J.J. Abrams' horrific Rise of Skywalker, right? We are bringing back a man who has no interest in the job. J.J. Abrams had no interest in finishing Star Wars. So, what kind of a surprise is it that his movie is absolute brass, right? That it is a complete disrespect for everything that was ever started, and it slams into a brick wall at 60 miles an hour and has upset a whole bunch of people. And when you try to watch it, it mentally and emotionally scars you, right? There are movies that reward rewatch. Rise of Skywalker punishes rewatch. Like, if you are a Star Wars fan, it will scrape your mind and your heart like an abrasive sandpaper, right? It is just terrible. And it should be terrible. The person who made it had no interest in doing the job. He was brought back for money, right? Why is Joe Biden being brought back? I don't think anybody paid him, right? Democrats, I think the Democrats, what's the real currency that Biden's going to get? I think they told him, hey, listen, you had incumbency, and you could have waltzed into the presidency in 2016. The person who took the job has absolutely massacred the role of presidency, and that's on your legacy. You want to fix your legacy, Joe? Right? And so that's why he's coming back. But the reality is he has absolutely no interest in it. And he is going to do exactly the same thing with the U.S. presidency and the 4 years he's given, or whatever amount of time he's given, right? He's going to get in there for 8 years. He's promising to do 8 years, which is outrageous. You're signing up for an 86-year-old president if you elect him, right? So he's going to come in and he's going to do the same thing J.J. Abrams did. What did J.J. Abrams do, right? Well, he hired his nonsense friends from the Lost trilogy, or from the Lost show, and he hired his nonsense friends from the Felicity show, right? Just plucking people out of series he did 10, 20 years ago, right? Just filled it up with his friends, right? And the reason why should he, right? Why should he take the job seriously? He didn't want it. He told them he didn't want it, right? And they're like, hey, let's just dump this pile of money on you and see if you can cobble together some piece of junk that we can put in front of people. And he did. He cobbled together some piece of junk and just shoved it out, right? And that's exactly what you're going to get if you vote for Biden. He has no interest in this job. And the presidency he gives will be exactly like the nonsense film that J.J. Abrams built. J.J. Abrams is a cautionary tale, right? If you want one of the worst U.S. presidencies you have ever seen in 240 years of this country's history, elect Joe Biden. You're going to get your Rise of Skywalker presidency. It is going to be filled with characters that don't belong there. It is going to betray everything this nation ever stood for, right? It's going to take good old classics like liberty and liberty, justice, usefulness, innovation, everything America, really stands for is just going to get chucked, right? Exactly the way J.J. Abrams was like, well, I know there's a rich history of Star Wars, but I don't have to deal with any of that nonsense. And since I'm literally being paid when I told them I don't even want to do this task, I could do whatever I want. And that's exactly what Joe Biden's going to do. He's going to do whatever he wants. There's not going to be any plans. He's going to fill the administration with his nonsense friends from old days, right? Doesn't matter. Nobody's going to get an audition. He's not going to pick people by merit, right? He's just going to, pluck out all the people who, whoever gave him a smile and a handshake from those days, right? Exactly the same way J.J. Abrams is. Now, the reality is Disney was not paying attention. They should not have hired somebody who told them that he didn't want the job, right? And they are now reaping the problems of that decision. We as a nation need to understand we do not want a J.J. Abrams, Joe Biden presidency. If you got the best job in the world, the U.S. presidency, give it to somebody who actually wants it. And Joe Biden does not. So unless you want an America filled with Zoris and Babu Fricks and a bunch of other characters that I can't even remember their names, nor can you, right? Do not elect this man who has absolutely no interest in the job. Pay attention to the horrible suffering that Disney is going through right now and trying to figure out how they're going to scrub this legacy of Rise of Skywalker out of existence. We don't want to make the same mistake. Be diligent. Do not elect Joe Biden. He is a nonsense candidate for nonsense voters, right? Do a write-in. That's your best option right now, right? I definitely don't think you should vote for Trump, but do not reward the Democrat Party for this absolutely savage, horrible decision-making and leading us to this terrible place. And if you think I'm wrong, go over to Disney and try to watch 15 minutes of Rise of Skywalker without pulling your eyeballs out of your skull, and you will see what I am saying, right? I'm working my way through that movie. I've gotten through an hour and 45 minutes of it, and it has taken me about 3 hours, because I can't go 2 minutes in it without having a 10-minute conversation with somebody in my family about the emotional scars I'm trying to heal, because of how incredibly damaging that film is to a powerful legacy. Don't let Joe Biden, tarnish the legacy of the U.S. presidency further than it's already been tarnished. Do a write-in. Do not vote for Trump. Do not vote for Joe Biden, or you will see the rise of Skywalker America, and it ain't going to be pretty. We will all be Babu fricked up. Okay? That's my opinion. I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.